Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to more Difference Makers here on Beck TV Plus. I'm your host, Jay Fettig, and not often in any sport can you look back and say there was a moment that literally changed everything, redefined what's possible. But in bowling, there was that one. And I want to welcome our guest today. That was the person that created that one thing that said what is redefined what is possible. So welcome back to the show, Kelly.
Thanks, Jay. Happy to be back.
So let's before we get to that statement that I just made, let's start your pro career and kind of take us again from beginning to where you started to have a little success. So what was that like when you first started out?
I was eager to be out there with the other ladies competing. I had competed as an amateur in an event in Kentucky, in Ashland, Kentucky, which was a tour stop for the women. Had some success there, finished in the top 24, got to go against some of the best legends of our sport. And that was really the introduction of what it was going to be like on a weekly basis, bowling against the best bowlers in the world. So from there, I graduated in 2001 and left Morehead State University, went right to the first tour stop in Florida and kicked it off with the USBC Queens and finished second to Carolyn Doran Ballard to kick off my pro career. So it was a lot of preparation from colleges, but really, in college you're bowling for team, on tour you're bowling as an individual. So it was that break of how to get there.
Well, Carolyn, I'm going to give a shout out. Carolyn is one of my partners here with BowlersNetwork, and I know she was her and Dell were recently at your place, so I want to give a shout out. Love you, Carolyn. So what was that like, knowing that you can go from college, as you just mentioned, where you had that big moment, now you're in the professional side, you're at the Queens, and you've made it all the way to the finals. You came up a little short, but that's okay. What was that like to your confidence, knowing you can come right out of the gate into the top and playing with the best?
Yeah, well, in college, I kind of was more of a shark. I had four-time All-American, MVP twice. We won the national championship. So my confidence was just on a high. And walking into my first professional event, I had some friends out there. My mother was with me, who was my biggest supporter. She was my confidant and just someone I could communicate to and with just to kind of process and talk things through. So she was with me and she was just my best friend. But knowing that you win the matches and you keep advancing, and then here I am in my first debut, and I'm going against Carolyn Doran Ballard, who went on to be Player of the Year and win 8 titles. I recall that show. I big forward in the first game, and I just lost, but it was a great shot off my hand. I had no regrets of that shot. So knowing here I am kicking off the season, and I'm going to the next event, which I think was in O'Fallon. It just elevated my confidence. It elevated my trust in myself and my gut of what I learned as a youngster growing up and learning the game of bowling and how to keep applying it moving forward. It was tricky because I went out on tour with Kelly Rapp, who bowled for Fresno, and we were very good friends in college and high competitors against each other. But we went out on tour together. So I think the crossover made it easy knowing there were two friends rooming together and traveling together made it a little bit easy to adjust, and knowing we had each other to rely on for, the debriefing of the day and so forth. But that made it easy, but knowing it was the long haul, I trained for it. I knew it. I spent summers in Ithaca working for Dick Ricker, teaching and coaching, being a student each week at camp. So it's almost like in the previous episode, I was just from a very young age learning what I wanted to do moving forward, knowing I was going to be that professional bowler, and I welcomed every challenge. I accepted it and I worked at it and moved forward from it, knowing that the first title was well in my hands. It just took a lot longer than I thought it would have.
Well, your career started to really advance, and you were the first woman in history to receive a full PBA, not PWBA, but a PBA tour exemption in 2006, which then led on to what I started today's show with, is that not often can you look back in any sport and say there was a very specific moment that redefined what is possible. You know, we have the 4-minute mile, we have those other things, right? But in bowling, you were the very person. That's kind of crazy to think about, right? You were the very person that redefined what is possible. And that happened in 2010. I think we got a clip of that. I'm going to pull it up right here. So here you are going into the finals up against Chris Barnes in the Tour of Champions. And here you come up and you nail it. You are the first woman to ever win not only a PBA event, but a PBA champ or major. That is off the charts crazy. And here, right here it is, where you kind of put the nail in the coffin, so to speak. What did that feel like?
I had dreams as a kid winning a professional title. You know, you have the women's tour, but then when the women's tour wasn't existing anymore, I was traveling with my boyfriend at the time, Jim Tomek, just wanting to bowl. And when the PBA had their tour exemption, they took 10. They had high numbers. The odds were good. They were in my favor. I did something with a bowling ball that most women didn't do. So there was only a handful of us, Leanne Holstenberg, Leanne Barrett back then, Michelle Feldman, Carol Giannotti, and I just knew I was one of the exceptions. So when I could say I actually dreamed of myself winning a national title, I saw my name in the big red lights up in front of me and so forth. It was already embedded in the back of my brain. It was just a question of when. And then, you know, bowling against Chris, the tournament champions, the story's been told, but by winning the women's world championships when there was the mini series in Detroit, Tom Clark gave the opening invitation to myself to come in and compete at the TSC. I didn't belong there. It was strictly for titleists only. Even though I was exempt, I still didn't have any success making many cuts or winning. But in that moment in time, I had nothing to lose. I saw the lane the way it was, and it just benefited me that it really played more towards my A game than anything else. And it was his history making. It was historic. You talk about a crowd being loud in a building, kind of like an arena. Well, I felt that that day of the show when I defeated Chris Barnes to win the TSC. I broke down glass ceilings. I opened doors for other things to happen for the women. Maybe that was one of the reasons there was the relaunch of the women's tour. Younger athletes and college bowlers said, "Hey, look what she did. Look what she accomplished. Maybe I can do that too." There's not as many limitations in bowling as there are in other sports because of the size of the equipment or the overall biological and body structure of male versus female. But bowling is one of those equal level playing fields, and I took them down. I won it.
Well, I think a lot of people agree with you, and that didn't just, change your career, as you said, right? It changed the ceiling and kind of maybe even removed the ceiling of what is possible. And I couldn't be more proud, not just for you, but really for the sport in general, because it opened up so much more for ladies and saw what is possible. So we're going to come back in the next episode, and we're going to talk to Kelly about legacy, right, and what it means to her. So we will come back again tomorrow with another episode with Kelly Kulick. So we'll see you then.